How many people here have been to a poetry slam? Cool. At slams, I like to be the sacrificial lamb. Get up first, calibrate the scorecards, quench your thirst for terse verse, well rehearsed. But tonight's not a competition, so instead, I'm going to play llama. Spit some trauma and resilience between the commas. Most of what I'm going to present is in the autobiographical genre. This is for those times you entertained an exit. Those times you nearly reached the end only to have a hand pull you back. Those times you made it through despite the lack of intervention. That you are here means you have a 100% survival rate. And how rare is it that we get to be perfect at something? That you are here is perfect. Have you got spare change for a good cause? Sometimes issues flow concurrently. Mental health and addiction move stealthily, creating a wealth of isolation, toss poverty into the equation, and suddenly there's a trifecta: apathy, lack of services, stigma. Have you got, Nietzsche said those who were seen dancing were thought insane by those who could not hear, spare change for a... They say it depends on your lens, which side of the plexiglass you stand. When I was street identified, homeless, hungry, hopeless. Systems designed to commoditize my existence often met me with contempt, though the person on the other side of the window listened intently, bound by protocol. The helping hand they offered often came up empty. Have you got spare change for a... I live in a city with 5 methadone clinics and no detox. If there were as many car crashes as there are opioid overdoses, we'd change the traffic laws. Have you got... Nietzsche said those who were seen dancing were thought insane by those who could not hear the music. Nietzsche said those who were seen dancing were thought insane by those who could not hear the music. Actually, that's a lie. Nietzsche never said that. But it's a catchy internet meme. Overworked frontline social workers spend most of their days attempting to bend rules. Eventually, some of them snap. Forced to use terms like client, consumer, service user. It's no wonder burnout is rising, mental health rates spiraling, rivaling a viral infection because it's cruel to give somebody the tools without the means to use them. Have you got... If you're gonna sit on the sidewalk spare changing, it pays to keep something under your ass. A blanket, a piece of cardboard to stave off hemorrhoids. Sidewalks were not built to carry us. They've removed most of the benches in downtown Peterborough because resting is bad for business. Now, if you wish to repose, it must be done on gentrified patios where you pay for the privilege. Have you got... Nietzsche said those who... No, I already told you that. He didn't say that. Spare change for a... I dream of a place where there are community parades, sidewalk shuffles, and rooftop serenades. Have you got... These are horizon days. That line where everything is more evasive than a rainbow's end, something to search for again and again. Tomorrow days ride along lazily like constellations on slow parade or a well-fed serpent hunched and slithering for shade. Nothing hides in the future. Every step towards provides, provokes. Sunrise is a secret proposal. Self-care can seem elusive when neck-deep in research and cleaning my apartment requires a filing cabinet I simply can't afford. To ensure that I disengage before rage and frustration set in, I keep a pile of papers marked play. Anecdotes, which prevent me from becoming misanthropic. My optics shift from trauma to tenacity with an elasticity of adaptability that sometimes escapes me, so I self-regulate, eat, dance, sleep, masturbate, keep my faith and meditate, breathe and wait. Staying patient feels like slaying anxious dragons, like phantasms fading, and yet this would still benefit from a filing cabinet. I'm just saying, it's hard to know when I'm engaged in self-care. It's all self-care, every part. Work plus play equals art. It's warm in here. Sometimes, when it's really bad, I put music on. Funk. Old school grooves thicken my skin to face trauma-laced narratives. Fat bass riffs brace against narrow minds that only see the bottom line. Percussive triplets suture wounded realities. A back line tying together singularities. We are all frontline workers, and with our new provincial government, we better rise at reveille. When the horn blows crescendo, this will not be hyperbole or just a militarily mixed metaphor. There's a war in the streets. And we are all a funk army. Whether your beat is country, classical, emo pop, hip hop, mumble rap, or disco, the drum is universal. So let's kick it. At age 12, I stood statuesque in front of mirrors, searching, perplexed, waiting for Venus to appear in the reflection. Penis tucked between thighs, legs crossed like a correction. I stood like a question mark. The answer, dance, pulse, surging, confessional breath, urging me to arabesque, plie, pirouette. This world holds us all exposed. Rented out to babysitters, I was as feminized as any kid could be, made to play doll for men and women who thought sex was child's play. My first defense, script verse on paper slips, pirouette on carpet, pirouette on carpet, pirouette on carpet, falling until my skin was burned. I never studied dance, just learned how to fall with accuracy rehearsed to elicit applause like a vaudevillian chameleon, turning tragedy into wine, numbing a harsh adult reality with a child's bright smile. There was no confusion when adults told me I was a good girl. Bright-eyed, long hair with curls. And no illusions in the schoolyard either. Drawn to precision, I played hard despite the derision. Hopscotch and double dutch. These activities offered clarity, improved my ambidexterity. To this day, I can still throw with both hands. And at times, that has meant fists. Because bullies can't resist picking on boys who skip. I know they were only jealous of my ability to test gravity. My aptitude for levity frightened them. Innocent and enlightened, I would soar all around, knowing that all flight requires is one's desire to leave the ground. When I would land, the boys would descend, grabbing, pushing like vultures fed by cultural bias, binary divides, plying us with dividing lines, and I would draw a line of my own. My grandfather recognized I was not like other kids, that I was caught in the middle. So he taught me to be a patient pugilist. Each fist begins in the opposite foot, he'd say. Energy rising through legs, hips, shifting weight, torso torquing toward target. This life is a tango, and my grandfather knew this world would never let me stop dancing. What I've learned is that it's impossible for me to walk a straight line on this earth, which is curved. I've heard so many expletives, curses, tossed like terse explosives. When those words turn to violence, both sides of my psyche conspire in silence, combining their wisdom like the Wonder Twins, devising tactics to survive in this world where attacks happen on a whim. The last time was 7 years ago, at the Red Dog Tavern in Peterborough. I was targeted by a group of rugby players. They made me their mark. Each of them took turns stumbling drunkenly into me, pulling my hair, kicking my legs, pulling my hair, kicking my legs, pulling my hair, kicking my legs, until finally I turned around and said, "Hey boys, I know you think I'm pretty, but you're not my type." There's a fine line between fight and flight. There's nothing heroic about this poem. After that night of violence, I went home and I cut my hair. Ever since I've kept it short, will I leave my chin a little long because it's safer to play chameleon. Regardless of my presentation, if I were to try and give my gender and sexual orientation punctuation, it would have to be an amalgamation. The line I choose to draw is an arc. Full stop. Exclamation. Question mark. Hold that sustain, yeah. Thank you. Everyone, Keira, thank you. Okay. How is everybody doing? Good? Good? Oh my gosh. I did that without breaking the microphone. That's awesome. Especially since it's not my mic. So I mentioned my grandfather in that poem, and I'm really lucky. I didn't have a lot of positive male influences in my life, as you may have gathered. But my grandfather was one of them. And Papa used to sing the song, "You Are My Sunshine," to my nanny every day. He sang the chorus, but he changed the chorus. Instead of, I hope you know how much I love you, please don't take my sunshine away. My grandfather, he would say, I hope I love you. I hope you know how much I love you, and I love you more and more each day. And one day I asked my papa, I said, Papa, why do you change the lyrics, and how come you only sing the chorus? And he said, because it's a terrible song. The other night, dear, as I lay sleeping, I dreamed I held you in my arms. When I awoke, I was mistaken. So I hung my head and I cried. When we teach this song to our children, we focus on the chorus. We skip over the verse. We omit the threats. If you leave me for another, you'll regret it all someday. And the blame. You have shattered all my dreams. There's no mention of the ultimatum. If you come back and love me, I'll forgive you. I'll take all the blame. A brief history of the song "You Are My Sunshine." Written in 1933 by a man named Owen, he freely shared it with the community. It passed through many hands, and in 1939, Hollywood actor and musician Jimmy Davis used it as he ran for the governorship of Louisiana. Jimmy Davis would ride into town on a horse named Sunshine. Backed by a children's choir, he would sing to the congregation. A strict segregationist, he was twice elected to public office. In 1941, the song was forever solidified in the American psyche when Bing Crosby released his rendition. Bing Crosby's son said his father would come home often in a drunken rage and beat the children with bags of oranges. His own version of Sunshine passed on from generation to generation, like the song carries on from generation to generation. "You Are My Sunshine" is not a murder ballad. It's pretty bad. Some ways it's worse. It sets us up to believe that love can be owned and possessed when we know that it can only be felt and given. But where pop culture is concerned, we miss the message, just get lost in the rhythm. That's why in 1984, Sting had to repeatedly tell interviewers, every breath you take is not a love song. It's about a stalker. And I'm really sick of shticks like Robin Thicke. Because where consent is concerned, there are no blurred lines. And it makes me sad, kind of, because love is like sunshine. It arrives, moves across our skies, makes our shadows dance. That's romance. And yes, sometimes it sets over the horizon, leaving us in what seems like darkness, but know that within that night there is light rushing towards us, each star a promise. I don't have an answer to how to change the culture that is forever programming us the wrong way, but I like my papa's solution. We need to hear it so that we can change the lyric. The other night, dear, as I lay sleeping, I dreamed I held you in my arms. When I awoke, I was mistaken, but I was thankful for the dream. Thanks. What time do you got? 15. Me too. I started at the same time. Okay. Okay. So I do a lot of I do a lot of trauma-informed art, which means that I start from a place understanding that we all have a relationship with trauma. And I hope that, you know, when I go into areas, when I go into other regions, I typically take resources with me, and so in case, you know, anybody in the audience wants to reach out. I work with male sexual assault survivors, and I have a poem that I'm not going to do tonight, which affectionately became known as my trauma poem. And everywhere I have performed that, a man comes up to me afterwards, always in the bathroom. Which is weird, right? You know, but we're alone, so there's safety around that. And one of the things, I bring this up because what I find about spoken word, my experience as an audience member, as an organizer, as a poet, is that it's through our shared narratives that we stitch together niches of resistance and resilience into tapestries for change, which is a long, almost poetic way of saying, we affect things, and it's wonderful to watch people be affected. But it's frustrating too, because we keep doing this and things don't change very quickly. There was a time in my life where I did make a very quick change. Dear cocaine, our affair began like the tango. Outcasts. A ballet of violent metamorphosis. Your choreography twisted me like a contortionist. I was so enamored with your fragrance. For days I would not bathe. Your song humming in my head like a requiem. For weeks I would eat just enough to feel like I was dead. Sleep when exhaustion caused me to collapse, and rest, well, that was just a chore I did until I had the strength to relapse. There's no question it was a destructive relationship, but it takes two to tango, and I kept filling my dance card with your palpitating rhythm, kept choosing your percussion over the heartbeats of others until isolated and alone. My remorse played like a somber violin, and A minor chord sustained on the wind became the note to which we moved. A constant pitch held high, the sound you hear when you hold your breath. Addiction's final sustain is the whisper of death, so cocaine, I left you. In 1975, I was 5. I got my tonsils out. In 1975, you spent the night in the hospital when you got your tonsils out. And in the morning, my mother arrived just as I finished my Jell-O and the spoon hit the bowl, and she said, "Come on, they're waiting for you." I went with my mother, and we got into the elevator, and I asked her if I could push the button, and she said yes, and we went up to the 5th floor. This was all 2 days after my birthday in the month of May, the 5th month. We went up to the 5th floor in the hospital, and my entire family was there. My great nanny was unconscious in a bed. Tubes, like massive animals. It was the 70s after all. Things whirring and buzzing, and as I came into the room, my grandfather grabbed a stool and he said, "Come on, she's waiting for you." I stood up on that stool and I touched her face. It was like leather. I bent down and I kissed her, and she flatlined. Moments later, I was in the car with my grandmother, and she was telling me that great nanny was in heaven, and I said, "I want to go to heaven too." And she pulled the car over and said, "No, you don't." That made things difficult when saying prayers. "20 years later, my great-grandmother, was in a hospital in Campbellford. She was dying. She had not moved in many days, and I was the last one to arrive. I walked into the room, and I put my hand in hers, and her palm curled around me. The doctor jumped. I bent down, and I kissed her, and she flatlined. 3 years later, my nanny, my grandmother, in a hospital bed in Campbellford. Her son was missing, my uncle. I went to find him. I found him in a doorway in downtown Toronto, and I phoned the hospital, and as soon as I said we had found him, he's safe, she flatlined. I have a history of feeling like I'm killing the women in my family. Right after I was born, there was a photograph put into the Toronto Star. 4 women, each with a hand extended, and I am laying across their hands. They have always held my life. I was raised in kitchens with chatter, 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 and always about the things that really mattered. So 6 years ago, when my mother was in a hospital bed with pneumonia, and the doctor said, "Do you want to pull the plug?" I stayed in that room, and I prayed, and I prayed, and I prayed, but I did not kiss my mother. And she lived. Thank you. In 2007, there was a sudden attack of gravity. I know that's a universal law, but that day relatively pulled hard on me. The impact left me cognitively impaired. Wes has a brain injury. Also a propensity for talking about himself in the third person. I think, therefore, I am disabled, I think. Worse, I feel cursed by seemingly innocuous words like client, consumer, and service user. There are days I have more respect for the kids who called me retard when I wore a helmet than I do for a system that calls me mister while it steals my independence. Yes, I'm blessed to live in a province that pays my rent, provides me with a bit of sustenance, but it would be remiss not to mention social services. Judas Kiss, simply put, it's a make-work project for academics and researchers to create polemic debate based on politics and other quick fixes, while the lives of many hang in the balance. Now, I'm not really going to apologize for this rant. Before my brain injury, I was a dancer, and I don't really have any answers except that I decided to go back to school. Now I'm a social worker. Am I down to 5 yet? Nope. What's that?
I'll tell you.
Yep. I will be told. There they are. It's funny when you can't find your glasses and you're looking for your glasses. Is that 5?
Like 7.
Perfect. Okay, so because I'm a trauma-informed artist, I mean, you guys should pretty much be ready for anything. You've come to a spoken word event, right? So, many nights I write suicide notes. It's one of the ways I cope. I draft them longhand. I've yet to write one that meets my standards, so here I am. Some days I feel damned. It's 50-50 to stay or quit. When I'm in the city, I avoid the subway, afraid I might end up beneath it. Many nights I stood on the platform waiting, foot tapping at the timing as the train's arriving, sights locked on the headlights shining. We're supposed to move toward the light, right? It's not my intention to raise anyone's concern, just feel the need to mention it's something I've learned to live with. This abyss in which I exist, I wish it were fiction. My mind twists, conditioned to affliction. My spirit lists like the ships I know I'm missing. There are days I stop wishing. Since various childhood abuses, rarely has life rivaled my desire for a knife, a noose, a great height, or fire. Many nights I conspire to make my escape, rarely contemplating the arrival. It's gone on for so long, I could be the poster boy for survival. And to that end, I've come up with a plan so elaborate, it requires a producer, stagehands, and a Canada Council grant for the arts to mount it. I stand a good chance of receiving funding. One night only, pay what you can. When the show closes, there'll be one less on the margins. And this isn't just about me. Statistically, 9 others will make a ghost meet their God. Whatever the host, it's bound to be flawed. The media takes suicide and make it topical. Celebrities check out and we speak about what we can't grieve. But what happens when in a Iqaluit, 5 girls at sunrise decide to make a pact of it? Papers hardly pay attention, just a 1-inch mention in the back of it. They like it when it's controversial, so we shift shame to the contemporary and blame technology. Now, while I believe cyberbullying to be a real threat, the truth is youth have been dropping since long before the internet. Sorry for the deflection. This is about me, why I reflect on this unnatural selection. I can't post this on Match.com, OkCupid, or Plenty of Fish, but if there's anyone looking for a temporary relationship, I can offer you passion like each day is the last one. I know that suicide, for whatever reason, is treasonous, and I don't want to play my own Judas. There's not much I can commit to that's obvious, so I'll make one promise, and it's this. While I'm alive, you'll hear rhymes from my lips. Times I wish I had studied dance. Oh! Oh! Uh-oh. There are great falls. Natural, like Niagara. Historic, like Rome. I think I broke your mic.
No. It's not broken.
It just goes on like that.
You know what? We're just going to leave this part out. Because I'm running out of time. There are great falls. Natural, like Niagara. Historic, like Rome. Mythical, like Lucifer. And lyrical, lullabies, fairy tales, and sing-alongs. We each keep record of our own descent. Individual chronicle of civilization's depths. We say never again, but like the cycle of water, evaporation, condensation, precipitation, history repeats. And so Niagara continues to flow. Civilizations crumble. The devil walks among us, and our narratives tell us we are helpless. Fatality is taught fresh from the womb. Lessons. We learn the grim truth about predators, wolves lurking to pluck our baskets, lead us from school, service justice for our deceptions. We fail to see that when nature falls, decides to autumn, it is to lay a bed to feed a seed. Instead, we warn children about the wind while cradling them with outstretched limbs. And down will come baby. Because we know, even if Red Riding Hood escapes the wolf, she will never trust the woodsman. I never used to think like this, be like this. I was just a body, a builder, a journeyman laborer, first a framer working on skeletons. I apprenticed, became a carpenter. Along the way, I picked up other trades, plumbing and electrical. I'm partial to things with current and flow, and I know we are too busy building, hurriedly raising compartmentalized existences, designing skylines while we ignore the horizon. It is our dreams which have carried us through the nightmare of this fabled existence, as ancient as Abraham, as modern as Neverland. But since our first eviction, since being forced into labor and learning fear, we've equated isolation with success and community with poverty. On nights like this, we try to address that hypocrisy. Stop spending it like currency to mend fences too bent for repair. Stop whitewashing over rot, then wonder why we stand in a thicket of broken pickets, listening to crickets toss back our wicked thoughts. Maybe it's the cat out of the bag. Got your tongue on the kitchen counter, you take a good look, it's just spilled milk. Perhaps you tripped in haste, running up the steps, crushed a whole carton of eggs. Accidents happen. If only they'd happen together, the milk and the eggs. Omelets for everyone! Except for the vegans, vegetarians, and lactose intolerant. For them, we'd harvest from a community garden. Let's work towards solving mystery, stop using conflict to resolve our history, recognize the blood we share is thicker than ideology, and strive to care more openly than we have ever dared. Encourage without agenda, understand without judgment, and embrace without effort. This place already exists. It sits between the lines of fiction, rests underneath religious propriety, and overrides the rigid abacus of calculation. It's called imagination. It can be found in the ruins of bold architecture, and I would risk my livelihood for the truth of a wrecker's ball. Tonight, at bedtime, after Mother Goose and before the Lord's Prayer, I will look into my child's eyes and fall. So my papa told me one thing that I'd like to leave you with, which is that if you're going to love, love like the earth. If I were the earth, I would hold you the way gravity grasps the atmosphere, grounded with horizon's breadth so that your breeze could move easily across my geography, this landscape which has been scorched and tortured. Your light is found to be fertile ground for love, pulling blossoms from my depths, fed with the nutrients of each caress, gentleness like dew on my flesh. The deserts of my regrets are flowering pastures. If I were the earth, I would respect the fire, wind, and rain you bring. Your elements make this strange terrain feel safe again. For many of us, the past has been disastrous, but we have survived catastrophe. Together, we are a new ecosystem, sexy like evolution, because love is about creation, cores burning, waters flowing, winds blowing, seeds of change for future harvests, and I'm ever so grateful to share this earth with you. Thank you.